we have done, the mayor asked me to get a hold of some engineering firms and ask them to take a look at the park and get some different concepts and some ideas and some cost factors on some proposals to what they would do for the city of Hillsboro to set us an overlay of all of our city property to show what they think we ought to do with it, where we ought to put everything so that we don't start in and then come back next year or 2 years from now and say, well, we put that in the wrong place, let's move this here, move that there, it costs us more money. But make an overlay of the whole property and a concept and kind of go by that. When we do something, this is the way it's going to be when we're done with it. These gentlemen are from URS Consultants out of Columbus, Ohio. Here's some books that they have made up with the proposals in them. Back sheet has the same concept as they have here in the blow-up. But I told them I'd just turn it over to them, let them go through the proposal and what they're doing. And we turned over, let's see here, it's here. On page 4, the scope of services here, we handed this scope of service out to every one of the engineers. So all of them would be looking at apples to apples. Now we know there's some going to look at different concepts. How deep do we want them to go into these things, or how extravagant we want to go? And that's a lot on cost, is how deep you want to go into these projects. So I'll turn it over to you, James.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelly, and thank you for the opportunity to come down and talk to you tonight about our proposal. As we mentioned, Greg Odie, who couldn't make it tonight, wanted to send his apologies and say that if there's any questions or if you want to meet again, he'll be available at that time. But real simply, one thing we don't want to do is repeat everything we've done in the proposal, because you'll be able to read it on your own time. But we do want to highlight just 6 major issues that we think are important and why we think that URS is in a good position to work with you here. First of all, our past experience in the park and rec business, most notably with OD&R. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources, which you're going to come to find is probably going to be one of your best sources for funding, is also one of our best clients. We do a lot of work with them, presumably because they like what we do for them. As a matter of fact, right now we're working for the OD&R up at the new state park up along Lake Erie, Maumee State Park. We're also, John just completed a project at the Senecaville Fish Hatchery for them. And we've done mine reclamation work and other work for them over the years and have a good relationship. I say it to you because it's important when you go to look for funding to OD&R that you select an engineer that knows OD&R, because you're going to have to know their organization well. As a matter of fact, Greg Odie is very close with Steve Carter, the chief engineer at OD&R. They used to work together, and we work together closely now. So that's the first major reason, is our experience. The second thing is, and I think it's a major factor of why we're located in Columbus, and that is we're close to the funding sources. And again, it's going to be an advantage to you later on, because I think it's going to come down to, eventually we'll all agree on a layout here, what you want. We'll be able to incorporate pretty much everything you want to see in a staged development approach. But it's going to come down to funding. And unless the money is available to do what you want to do, it doesn't matter how pretty the plan is, it's not going to happen until there's money there to back it up. So that's why we think us being located in Columbus is an advantage. It's also an advantage to us being a large firm, because we have many clients around the state, and consequently, we're always out looking for funding sources. When we it's something we do as a main part of our business, not a sideline, but the main part of our business. Another advantage is that we're members of the Ohio Parks and Rec Association. And so we, so to speak, rub shoulders with other people in the business and come to find out what's current, where funding sources are at, that kind of thing. Third point we wanted to mention tonight is that URS is multi-discipline. And what that means is that John and I, for example, are civil engineers, but that's by no means all that URS is comprised of. We have architects, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, landscape architects. Matter of fact, the fellow that was down at Cassidy is a landscape architect. So you get the advantages of, if you want to develop a park to this concept, that would include a building, basketball, indoor volleyball, that kind of thing, a pool, parking lots, grading, underground pipelines and whatnot. Lighting is a big deal when it comes to for example, baseball fields. And you can screw it up real easy unless you have a person who understands lighting and electrical systems. And URS doesn't have to go out of house for any of that stuff. Everybody that we would use to develop a park like this, and it usually takes a little bit of everybody, an electrical engineer on the lighting, a civil engineer on the grading, perhaps a sanitary or hydraulic engineer on the pipelines, water and sewer, architect on the building, mechanical person on the swimming pool. It's entirely in-house. We think that's a real strong plus that we have to offer. Now, getting a little more project specific, we've prepared this rendering for a couple of reasons. Number one, we wanted to show you just one possible scenario. After meeting with Kelly and others here, our people came up with this kind of arrangement, only that would show kind of a broad brushed view what's possible down there. This isn't to say that if you go with URS, this is what you're getting. What we're saying is, this is one thing that appears to meet all your requirements, and is technically feasible, but certainly if we're selected, we plan to offer several alternatives, and together we'll collectively pick the one that you want to do. But renderings like this are helpful for a couple of reasons. Number one, you in turn are going to have to sell your public on this. Eventually there's probably going to have to be at least some part local funding spent for a park like this. And it's a lot easier when you've got a rendering like this than when you're trying to explain conceptually with words what it is you're proposing down there. A picture is worth 1,000 words, especially at this point in your planning. Second thing is, eventually you're going to have to go to a funding agency. We think most likely it'll be ODNR. When you do, and you show them something like this, you're telling them we're serious about what we want to do. As a matter of fact, so serious, we spent the time and effort to put together a plan so that it shows, hey, these guys are serious. They thought about it, they put something together, and it's not just pie in the sky wishful thinking, like a lot of communities do. A lot of communities go in there and say, if you've got the money, I'll come up with a plan. Well, it doesn't work that way. You've got to come up with a plan and show your good faith effort first before the funds start to follow, and these kind of things help. That's why we've done the rendering. That's why we've blown it up so that not only you'll have one you can take with you, but there's a large one available when you want to mount it in the council chambers, for example. The fifth item we wanted to mention was that we've also tried to be sensitive to the staged construction approach so that you're not without facilities, so that there's no downtime while you're trying to get the new facilities up. So we're very sensitive to that. We also, at the same time, have tried to incorporate some other things. Anytime you can do double duty, it's a good idea. For example, you'll see a pump house here. The thought being that at some future date you may want to irrigate these fields, keep them in prime condition during, say, the summer months. That's certainly a good idea. We picked up when we were down here and tried to incorporate it. Perhaps that idea could even get expanded into perhaps somehow tied into the new reservoir, where perhaps this could become a raw water line that at certain times is used to irrigate the fields and other times is used to supply the water plant if necessary, if something like that should ever be necessary. So we want to let you understand that we're geared into those kind of local issues, and we don't just put together a plan from afar and send it down and that's the end of it, but we try to get involved for little things like this. The last item, before we go into details on this plan, is fee. I know our fee is important to you because it's money you're going to have to come up with. And Greg wanted me to mention two things. Number one, we're always negotiable. We don't ever want to have fee be a reason why we can't get a job. So if there's any way possible, we want to work with you to get our fee compatible with your expectations so we don't pass up a job solely for that reason. However, we also want to let you understand that when we go to work for you, we expect to immediately start looking for funding sources. So we're not only working for you on an engineering plane, but we're also over in the, if you will, the political financial arena, fighting for you to get funding to make all this happen. So that's a major consideration. So in addition to all the engineers and architects that are working for you, you have other people that are looking for that funding. Because that more and more becomes the real tough part. The engineering, by way of comparison, is easy to the funding portion.
What do you do? Most of your funding is at 50-50?
That's what's going right now through the Land and Water Conservation Fund that ODNR administers. And that's a good one.
tear up on it or anything. Is there any way that we can utilize where we have purchased the land? Is that part of our money that we can go after?
Greg and I talked about that, and I didn't get enough from Greg to answer that real well. So let me defer that one to Greg. Greg seemed to think there was. He was real happy that, the kind of price breaker you're talking about there, that adds up to a lot of money.
I think we got about $280,000 just in land cost.
That's
So if that
substantial.
should be utilized as our 50%, to go after the other 50 from the state, we could do a good bit of work with farmers.
But with that, how about some detailed questions on anything that you see here? I don't want to upstage the proposal, but do you see anything that either grabbed you that you really like it, or that doesn't sit well with you because it's contrary to what you thought might be the case? I think we all know that basically we put a community building up here. It sits a little higher, so we overlook the entire facility from up here. We've shown a small amphitheater in here for the to pick up that slight ravine that's in there, trying to take advantage of the natural topography. Playing fields down here. Again, with baseball, we all know what baseball means to Hillsboro, so that's obviously the priority here. But there's other things. Of course, soccer is shown. A jogging trail and fitness stations through the perimeter. One thing we don't show here, there will be interconnecting paths, but we didn't want to clutter up the drawing with those, so that it'll be easy for people that are, say, doing whatever up here, can get down to these fields relatively easy. We've also shown restroom and concession stations throughout. You'll see one here, here. That's an equipment storage building, but there's also a restroom concession there throughout.
Another thing down at the lower side down here, of course, you have your existing wastewater treatment plant. There'll be adequate place for expansion in the future. There's some visual barriers to the treatment plant, such as some kind of plantings and that type of thing that you might put in there. Also the concept of the fact that you might need some earth fills and things to get some of these ball diamonds up out of the floodplains and everything. In order to get the material, the dirt of a small lake, that type of thing could be excavated down into this area. It's not necessarily shown, but that could, in one of the alternatives, be a possibility.
The other thing we wanted to mention was parking. That becomes an issue, especially tournament time. There's nothing sacred about this parking. Basically, we gave the priority to the playing areas, which is what you do in a park. And then parking was fit in as a secondary priority. It would be a simple matter to either expand or to reduce the amount of parking that's shown here. We also picked up that access was important to you. So if you notice the boulevard type street arrangement here, it's done purposely that way to, especially with a dual lane boulevard, which means 4 lanes across, to accommodate a large flow of traffic either in or out by just simply barricading off those parking lots there.
Parking is very necessary out there. But how many, what are we talking about, Chief? The average spaces for cars out there?
Oh, I don't know, probably average 400 nightly, every night, tournaments we have. Well, that's about 400 or 500, about all you can get in the 2 parking lots that we have.
Okay. For example, this parking down here shows approximately 580 cars.
Could be expanded either way to make less or to make more.
There again, I'm talking about the front part, the back part.
You're not talking softball either.
There's probably another 100, 150 cars back here that I'm talking about. So we're in the neighborhood of 500 nightly.
One of the other things we do, of course, at every step along the way, is we put together a detailed cost estimate that breaks out items such as parking lots and so on and so forth, so that you can make the decision based on dollars, what to take out, what to leave in, what to change. Anything else grab you? I know this is the first time you're seeing this particular rendering, but is there anything else that grabs you
you were talking about cost factors on various parts of it. What if we go to one of the diamonds, say the Babe Ruth diamond, and we wanted two costs. One was just bleacher type seating, similar to what we have with overhead protection over the crowd, shelter light, and then grandstand seating, where you would have instead of bench seats, they would be theater type seats, maybe plastic or something like that. But what if we asked for both costs to sort of weigh the thing?
You bet, we can do that. As a matter of fact, we do it routinely. And even better than that, if you wish, a lot of these, seating is a classic example. A lot of it's very proprietary. By that I mean, seating isn't a commodity as, say, lumber is, for example. In other words, if we wanted the price of a 4x4 wood post, we could get you that price to within pennies. Seating is a little different. It's kind of a specialty item. And so what we could customarily do is actually bid it that way. Bid it both ways. Don't just accept our cost estimate, because again, all an engineer's estimate is trying to estimate what the market condition is. We'll bid it that way. We'll put it in our bid documents. And that way, let the contractors tell us what the lowest price is. You know yourself that you'll talk to one particular type of seating manufacturer, and his is the lowest cost. You'll talk to another, no, his is the lowest cost. You don't know which to believe. The truth is told on bid opening day. And you've got a side-by-side comparison based on a fixed number of seats, and you know exactly what the best price truly is. And that's it. Can I just take this opportunity to mention one other point? And that's detailed plans. I know that the construction of things like baseball fields, as opposed to a community building or a pool, is pretty straightforward. There's probably good contractors in the area that put in their share of ball diamonds and can do a good job. We, however, are strongly recommending you go to that detailed plan phase for two reasons. Number one, because you're going to be using public monies, you're going to have to go out to bid. And in addition to that, ODNR is going to want to see a set of plans that they can approve prior, so that they're not taking your promise that we'll do it right. They can actually see it in working drawings that you've done a responsible job, and that way they're going to fund it. It's going to work. And along with that, I think calculations concerning the floodplain, for example, more than what a contractor might just necessarily see. So we're suggesting that once the master plan and the alternative is selected, that you do go ahead with detailed plans, because it's going to be required if you start talking about spending public money.
Let's go a little bit farther with that detail plan. How far into detail are you talking about?
Enough detail so that the way it was always been explained to us, if you're going to use money, you should be able to give it to a contractor out of Gal Place, for example, who's never been to the site, and yet he can walk onto the site. Well, first of all, he can put together a responsible bid. He doesn't have to come to the site and do his own investigation. If there's enough information on the plans that if he chooses to, he could bid off those plans and put together a responsible bid. We strongly suggest every contractor come and visit the site. As a matter of fact, make it a requirement. But those plans and documents should stand alone. So to that level of detail. Anything less, and I know it sounds like, well, we'll save some money. Sometimes it turns out that it ends up biting you. So enough detail that he can put together a responsible bid. Number two, enough detail that it can go out to construction, get it built that way without any change orders. That's a nasty word in our business.
Yeah, it is in ours too. It costs more money every time you change order.
So sometimes, what do they say? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Better to spend an ounce in engineering than to spend a pound out in construction.
Do you do very many jobs without a change order?
Oh, yeah. The last 5-10 years, used to be there was nasty. You just didn't do them. Anymore, they're more or less accepted a certain amount. One of the things, I don't know if we showed here, is our change order record. URS does two things. We show how we've done bidding-wise, how our cost estimates have come in during actual bid conditions. We're within like 3%. I think we're like 3% under. So our estimates are actually a little higher than what the true bids are. And our change order history is pretty good there too. pretty pleased with that. Again, I think it goes back, I think we're a good firm, but I'm biased there. What I really think it is that we do everything in-house. A lot of smaller, especially smaller AE firms, say a guy wants to do a baseball field, it's going to be lighted. He'd be a good civil engineer, he'll do you a good job in the field, but he has to go out of the house to get the lighting done. And that's where the problems occur. Now you're talking about two engineers. The first, the prime engineer, doesn't understand a lot of electrical, so he just takes what's given him, hopes it's right, and gets stung it later on. We don't. It's done entirely in-house, so the package is what we call coordinated. And so that lighting is just as if it's just one of the bases. It just fits right into the overall scheme. So we've been lucky there. Our history's been real good. As a matter of fact, that's another, if you'd like, we could provide information showing not only our bidding history, but our change order history. In other words, there's three costs you really want to see. One is the engineer's estimate. The second one is the bid, what it actually came in at. And the third one is the final cost. Because the story isn't told until the keys are turned over to you. And so we like to, it's a good fact, we show well in those three categories, so we use it as a promotional tool to show clients just what we have estimated, and then what it's bid, and actually what it cost. And you get an idea of our change order history there. And again, it's very, very low.
I think it's very important that estimated engineering cost is as close as possible, because a lot of contractors are looking at that, how they bid the project. I mean, they're not going to bid $20,000 under what if you just come out here and grab some figures, put them down, and bid 20 under, and then wonder what they missed.
Yep.
I mean, they really look at what that engineer puts down on paper and how close they are when they come up with their final bid to see if
Who
they're
does the field work on that?
Generally, our own URS crews, led by a licensed surveyor.
What you've done now is just off an area.
Just off the edge. We haven't sent a crew down. No, we haven't.
We haven't done it.
No, right now there's an existing aerial topo map that Kelly had supplied the information off of us. And this particular concept was just done using that particular information. During final plans, that particular contour map will be available to initiate the existing base sheets that we would need. And there would be some supplemental surveying data that would be needed, and we have in-house crews with registered professional surveyors that would do any work that would need to pick up any topo, any particular items that were not on the map would be added by our crews to the mapping.
I'm not sold on aerial photography as far as, going in and building something
All right.
with the foliage like it is out there. I don't know when they blew it. And the ground is, well, from your parking lots, including your parking lots, down is so level that it's, it could be off quite a bit. Like moving a diamond down closer to the creek. I don't know.
That's a good point. What you're saying, I know where you're coming from. Let's say, for example, oftentimes the county engineer will fly the entire county. And that's good information to have overall, baseline information. But unfortunately, that information gets extrapolated, things get blown up or shrunk down, and ultimately somebody uses them as a site plan. And where for the county engineer originally, for his purposes, plus or minus 2 or 3 feet was fine. When you're talking about a several 100-foot elevation difference over the county, a couple feet is fine. But it's not good enough when you're getting down to this kind of localized planning. There's nothing sadder than contractor leaves a job and the first rainfall afterward you see bird nests all over the place.
Well, I got on Dick, this was all flooding in these contours for Wolfers. When they were doing our wastewater facility and our water projects and things of that nature. They were good, but when you get down to that 2.5 feet, and you mess with the bowl line, and you get a little bit closer to the creek than you thought, and you drop off another foot or 2 here or there, you can really get yourself in trouble.
Yep.
Dick used to survey the state of Ohio as well, and go out and do a lot of shooting, a lot of topo and things of that nature, find out exactly where you're at when you're working with a project like that. We feel this is close enough to that creek that we want to be a little more particular as we
Is that included in your,
Survey?
yeah,
Yes. That comes as part of our package.
But I don't believe that's in.
It's not in the scope.
Not in
of
the
work.
scope of work.
Hey, this particular scope is strictly for, and maybe we got to turn to that scope of work.
maybe I should have read that before I asked all these questions.
Well, you didn't have the benefit of it, but on page 9, we talk about it's pretty brief, we talk about the lump sum, our fee $6,500. And what we talk about there is for items 1 through 6, which again corresponds to the scope that you put out. And like Kelly said, you wanted an apples to apples comparison, that's the only way to do it. And item number 2 there, it says, we put in a proviso, the city is responsible to provide a boundary survey of the proposed site along with a topographic survey. Recognizing that is a very important item. We're certainly available to do the work.
But that's going to be added on then.
Yes. If ultimately you look to URS to do that, yes.
Phase 1 just prepares the master plan. It does not do any of the construction documents needed for construction. That would be phase 2 of the work.
Basically, phase 2, they would probably be sending survey crews in, doing a survey and getting exact topo and things of that nature, saying how much fill dirt had to be put here and there to build it up to the certain phases, move drainage ditches and things that really be laid out right down to it.
And then to show all the contouring, the layout of the ball diamonds, the actual design of the driveways and the pavements, and that type of thing to indicate to the contractor what he needs to do to build it. That's phase 2. That's separate from the 6,500. 6,500 is the master plan.
I got lost someplace. How you going to do that without doing a preliminary survey?
Okay. Just use the existing survey information available. For planning purposes, by planning, we've got to be careful. We don't mean to say detailed plans, but just overall master planning, the information is generally good enough. But it's not good enough for final working drawings, like Kelly explained. We have to go to a much more detail.
Every engineer that I have talked to states that the topo that we have is good enough for them to sit down, lay the 234 acres out, and come up with a master plan how everything to be laid out on that property. That's not saying that's exactly how it's to be built, because once they go in here and they do the surveying of the topo, it may need filled here or cut there, things of this nature. But that is their general feeling to where these things should be located. It's what I've been told. That's wrong. That's what everybody's told me. You know, they said, every engineer that I've talked to about this project.
There'd be nothing wrong if the money's worth. There'd be nothing wrong to do it at this point in time.
And I think that's something the committee needs to look into if they feel that that is another strong point that they want. Send back and ask for another request, what that cost will be. I mean, there's nothing saying we have to say tomorrow, yes, we're going to take this one, or no, we're not going to take that one, We've got time to look at it and get into detail, things of that nature. Because I know there's going to be stuff that we're all going to say, well, we should have added this, or we should have said something about this, things that you want to add on through the project.
How's vandalism been here as far as historically? Is vandalism a problem?
No.
Like it?
Hasn't
I'm
been.
not saying we don't have some, but it's very, very minor. And I think the reason, we've had more probably in the last couple of years than we've ever had. And I think that's because the people are coming out our way. See, 10 years ago, there wasn't any apartments or houses or anything out here. And I think if we move on back there, it's going to be, until they start building back in there, it's hard for them to get to.
That's something else that we were looking at too, you know, our entry points, that we could have gates that would be locked in the winter time, where people couldn't just drive back in or things of this nature. Of course, we can always open the gate, go back into a wastewater treatment plant, in and out, things of that nature, to keep people from just going back in and driving around. We close the ballpark in the winter time, put gates across it and things, so we keep it from getting that. But I think you got about probably 100-acre concept there too, and we're sitting on 25 acres where we're at. We're going to spread out a lot more.
We always worry about things. Of course, there'll be city people, periodically having need to go back through here, but we worry about buildings that are somewhat isolated like this. Again, that's where our experience helps play out, because we know what works vandalism-wise. Some things look awfully nice on paper, look nice when you're passing around the colored brochure, but experience has shown in the field they don't last more than 6 months or a year. So
Well, see, we have somebody there from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock at night.
That's going to help.
In fact, this year we even had probably 2/3 of the time somebody there all night. So it's something I'd like to ask. What would happen if, we'll say that your firm is hard, then we couldn't do this whole project right away. But we came up with, we'll say money to build, well, the first 2 softball diamonds, like as you're coming in. And we wanted to go ahead and do that ourselves, using what you have grown up using. Can we do that?
You bet you can, and if that's the understanding, we can probably even do it at less cost than if we we're going out to bid. What I'm thinking is, let's say you want to put in just a couple of diamonds yourself. We would probably just prepare detail plans and not prepare any bidding documents, because no bidding can take place. You do it yourself. So that would be a cost-saving measure right there. On the other hand, you got to be a little careful, because it's going to be lopsided. You may have to spend, maybe, let's say that this total development plan, let's see with this concept. You may have to spend 40% of the cost just to get 2 diamonds. And the reason is there's a certain amount of basic dirt moving, access road, that kind of thing that has to go on before you can even have access to these 2. If you know what I'm saying. In other words, when we price this thing out, you might say, gee, it only cost me, I'm going to pull a figure out of the air. It's only going to cost me $5,000 per field. Why, gracious, that's pretty good. I've got $10,000. I'll put me 2 fields in. Be careful, because there's an access road, parking, other basic things that have to go in here. A lot of dirt to be moved, for example, before you can even get to the point you can start building on those 2 fields.
Well, that was my thought would be, if you came up with the plan and say that we build the first 2 softball diamonds there, you would have the elevations for the softball diamond. You would have some type of a random line run in there so that we could work off of it.
Yep.
To spot the diamonds in the parking lot and so forth.
There'd be drivers throughout the development that you can pick up.
So,
Temporary.
would it be possible we could just build those 2 according to the scheme that you've come up with and the plan you?
Yes, there would.
By building those 2, we wouldn't run into, if we went back and built 2, I can see what you're talking about as far as getting a road into it.
You bet you could.
I don't know if either one of you gentlemen have been to the site or not, but where you've got the lanes coming in, there's a small 1 lane existing right there now. I think that's what everybody's been thinking about. Maybe we could come up with enough money to do some of our softball concept now, and then try to work on through the project and maybe do it in stages. Maybe do it in-house if we could, but we don't want to do it and do it wrong and then mess something else up on down the line. We do it in stages, and if we could, the engineering firm tell us what we need to do in those stages so we don't mess something up on down the line.
You bet we can, and that's the good part of master planning. Master planning up front tells you overall what you're eventually going to do. Then it's easy. If you pick out and say, okay, URS, we like your master plan, we're going to go with it. However, we're going to go very slowly staged, and we're only going to go with 2 diamonds, for example. You bet we those in and tell you how to do it. For example, if this happens to be a fill area, I'm just going to say, for example, this is a fill area, you need a lot of dirt to be brought in from somewhere else on the site to fill this up to the elevation that is pre-selected. We might say, no, we recommend you build the two here, because these are cut areas, and you're actually removing dirt here, depositing it there, and yeah, those kinds of things. Kelly, you probably, yeah, we do it all the time.
How many extra ball diamonds do you think we need, I mean, right away?
right now. Probably 3.
Like the 2 girls softball and adult softball?
Well, if we, depends on where the girls softball to be located. If we locate it where the present adult softball is, then we would need 2 for the adult softball, plus possibly 2 or 3 for the girls softball.
I think everybody's been thinking the concept, if there's some way that we could move the adults over there and build their softball diamonds, then we could let the girls take over where the adults are and start moving through the project. It's easier to move the adults away from the kids than just to split the kids up, have some kids here and some kids there, and keep it together.
The way this is laid out, you wouldn't have to worry about that much of an access for where they've got the adult softball diamonds placed. It's pretty close to the road.
Yeah, if there's access there, it could use existing roads, you know, if it had to. Just long as you're set back far enough from the existing road and things of that nature, when you go through your development, you got the room there to put the roads and the things in that you want to put in there, and you got the parking and things.
How long does this, what was it, $6,500? How long does that employ you guys?
Oh, golly. Not as long as you might think. You know, it sounds like a lot of money, but
No, it doesn't sound like a lot of money to me. Say we do that in stages and we're using it for the next 20 years.
Well, you know, basically that $6,500, all they're going to do is answer these 6 questions. For the
Answer.
Right. They're going to give it to you in writing. They're going to prepare a comparative cost estimate for the project, give you that. They're going to give you a rendering. But say if we want to change something on here, we get down, we sit together, no, we don't like that, we want to change this. They're going to give a final rendering of the project to how the master plan should be. Just that $6,500 is basically only for these 6 questions.
So what if we want to change something 12 years from now?
You've always got the right to change your mind, you know.
But I mean, do we sit down with them?
No, but once they get this 6 done.
That's why I say, how long does this?
let's say this. I think I understand your question. What you're saying is, let's say that we come up with a plan we all agree on, and we're doing it in stages. We're doing an improvement every other year. 12 years out, you decide that adult softball is no longer popular and soccer is. So instead of adult softball, we want to put in soccer fields. Will we still master plan for that fee? Say, for example, I think the answer to that is, because this sort of things happen, where by that time we have so much information on the existing park, it's easy for us at that point to make that kind of change. So the longer out it goes, generally the easier it is to make a change like that. Now, if it gets too radical, then essentially you change the entire master. Yeah, then we have to go back to square one and start all over with our master planning process. But if it's just a simple matter of, we're having such a good turnout at those tournaments, make that parking 250 cars instead of 165 that they show now. No problem. So, in answer to your question, minor changes, no problem. Major, fundamental, conceptual changes usually mean going back to the drawing board from square one.
My concept that I've ever had with the engineering company, as long as you're still working with them, they work along with you. But once they did, they charge you for everything you asked for.
I'm not sure. Maybe I might understand your question a little bit. You were kind of asking, when we did this master plan, how long it was going to take us to do it, possibly.
No. What I meant, if we do this, you were talking about the engineering work. If a contractor came in you would lay everything off for the contractor. Well, I don't know why you'd have to lay it off.
We have to provide a baseline and an elevation, so we control it
Okay.
horizontally and vertically, then it's his job.
And they take off of that.
But once again, that's final plan type work.
Right.
It's not considered in these.
Okay, now, once that's done, and you have submitted the final plans, and you've run your random line in, and your elevations and so forth, then you're through.
If you want us to be through. Now, there's actually, we think of it in terms of 4 stages. The first stage is master planning. That's what this proposal is about. The second stage is detailed plans. We come up with blueprints, working drawings, and bidding documents to go out to construction. The third phase, we usually figure, is bidding phase. If you want us to be involved in the bidding, issuing plans and sets to potential contractors, answering questions, preparing the bid tab, that kind of thing, that's the third phase. And the fourth phase, if you want us, is construction. We could provide inspectors, construction managers, whatever you want. We could provide in the fourth stage. I would think here in this case, what will probably happen is you'll have your engineer do the master planning, of course, have to do the detailed plans, probably have him involved in the bidding phase. But I wouldn't think he'd be heavily involved in the construction phase here. So once the bids are open and you get a contractor, he gets sent on his way, generally we're involved for things like the monthly progress payments. They want to be paid every month as work progresses. We'll handle that. We'll handle all those bonds, insurance. There will be some construction. What we'll do is go out and cross-check things to make sure that generally it conforms before we recommend to you that you pay him. But that's totally up to you. We could have a full-time inspector if you want. We can go that far. Or we could just come down once a month. Or after we open the bid, you may not want to see us again. I say that in a polite sense, that, you know, bids have come in where they're supposed to, and it's time to get on the way. That's it for us in this project.
Well, I don't think that we're talking a project that we're worried if this baseball diamond goes in, whether they can play on it or not. I think, you know, we get people, Mike Dick and other people to know whether that thing's been put in right or it hasn't been put in right. Not like building a wastewater treatment plant or a water plant is going to work or isn't going to work. Are they doing this right? Are they doing it wrong? Are the concrete at the right stages and things?
A lot of underground
Piping and things, whether it's going the proper way or not.
How about interest in the amphitheater? There's been a lot of interest shown in the amphitheater.
Not a whole lot. I came up with that idea just for that location. We do have Southern State College out here that does put on plays. We do have a puppeteer that lives right here in Hillsboro, you know, different things of that nature. We just thought, you know, we were trying to fill up the area and look for things that we could utilize the area for. Thinking, well, we had 234 acres. What could we put all in this 234 acres? And kind of dream for the future where it wouldn't be taking a piece of property that couldn't be utilized for something else.
Have you ever had much water complaints in the wastewater plant?
Well, we're just finishing our new wastewater facility. So, we don't know where we stand at yet. We shouldn't have that. Okay?
You should.
We got a new $5 million facility that's just going to finish built there. So, hope that we don't have a lot of it. We're just going to get some, no matter what you do.
You're a little downwind, or it should be a major factor. Frankly, this is a good use for that kind of facility. Encroaching floodplain, wastewater plants.
Yeah. The right feasibility is to utilize your effluent from your wastewater treatment plant to go back and irrigate that.
That's right.
I mean, it's supposed to be drinkable when it comes out the other end and it isn't doing nothing but going on down the creek. I mean, that's your practical way. You already have your pumps at your wastewater treatment plant. I mean, you can pump back very easily to irrigate or to water them sites.
If we had the money to get this thing started and build the whole thing, how long would it take? I mean, what are we looking at?
We can play with some timelines. Let's say you told us to get to work on it immediately. you like it, get started. In here we have a schedule, an approximate schedule of time. I think we're talking about, I have it right, about 30 to 45 days.
Yeah, I'll finish in 26, right?
So that's just for the master planning.
Alternate site plan, it's on page 8, project schedule. Alternate site plan, 45 days, items 1 through 3. Final master plan with cost estimates, item 4 through 6 and 30 days.
I think he meant those to be cumulative, which means we're 75 days out from the completed master plan, which at this time of year is realistic. We've got the holiday season coming up, and, which means sometime after the first of the year, we'd be prepared to start the second phase. That'd be the first phase, master planning. The second phase would be detailed plans. And that's where John comes in real heavy. How long, John, if we wanted to put together a set of detailed plans and specs on, say, what's shown here, how long, something like that. And let's not include the community building, the pool, and everything else.
First of all, you'd have to decide on phasing, exactly how much you want to do. I doubt very seriously you want to do everything all at once. You may, but let's say, for example, you want to do some area like this off the side, maybe put in 3 ball diamonds, soccer field, picnic areas, and some minor type work for the first phase. To prepare the detailed plans, probably talking something like 45, maybe 60 days. So maybe during the month of January and February, you get the plans prepared and advertise, and you could be out for bids sometime in March. Can't do any construction during that time of the year anyway, so right now is a good time to start that type of thing.
As soon as the weather broke in the spring, you'd be ready, you'd have a contractor ready to push through.
And if you wanted to do more work other than just phase 1, if you wanted to do it in a large amount of work, providing you were just sticking with ball diamonds, grading parking lots and roads and that type of thing, not trying to put any buildings in, the amount of time to do additional work would not be that great. Now, it would take a little longer if you started to get into architectural, electrical items associated with a community building, swimming pools and that type of thing. It would take a little longer. But nevertheless, to develop a site about this size in its entirety probably wouldn't be much over 90 to 120 days, that type of thing.
Which means maybe like August, they could be looking to, I don't know if they'd be playing on the fields. They might, depending on where the contractor. We could actually stage it such that we could tell a contractor, arrange your work, Mr. Contractor, so that you're seeding or sodding on these fields prior to wrapping everything else up. Normally, the construction, the seeding or the sodding would be the last thing to happen. We could tell them, make it the first thing to happen. Or let's get that sod or seed down in like May. You know, if you could irrigate or something, temporarily irrigate and whatnot, you could probably be playing on that by August, September.
But after the master plan is prepared, it would then be your decision sometime early in the year to decide exactly what it is that you needed at that time for the first phase. And that would be solely your decision as to what you really needed and what you're prepared to undertake at that particular time.
And see, that would be based on funding, obviously. So hopefully in the latter part of this year, the very first part of next, we'd be working close enough with you, we'd all have a pretty good idea of what kind of money you could expect at the beginning. If you got a lot of money, obviously you do good. Not so much, you have to scale back.
I think the ball down is the most important. And I like what you said. I mean, once you get started, you give those diamonds, however number it is, whether it's 2, 4, or whatever, give them a high priority. And you know, get them so that they can use them, because we live here, and if they didn't have these ball diamonds to use and play with, we'd probably have to leave. So I think we should, you know, think of at least completing those, if it is all possible. I'm not course, parking too. Parking should go along with that.
But parking isn't as time dependent as seated. You get seed down, you know, in the month of May, you have a good chance of having something by the end of summer. We could tell them to do just that.
But you're basically almost going to be clear through your fall season where they're going to be, you can go one anyway.
Phase one costs $6,500, what's phase two gonna cost? Phase three?
We can best tell you that when we decide just what phase two is gonna be. That's why it's got to be taken a step at a time. When we finally agree on a final overall plan of what exactly you want to do, that's when we can give you the best price.
And if you were chosen to do it, well, naturally you go after the funding
That's a big
right away.
Yes, that's a big part of what we do. Because we realize we don't get onto a phase two if there's no funding. We're in this thing together. When you get funded, that means we get to work, funds our work to get on with phase two, and so on.
You're talking about matching funds, like through,
Yep.
ODNR.
That's the best source. That'd be one of the first places we'd stop, the ODNR.
How long does that process take?
When you, okay, there's, and Kelly can probably tell you this best, but a lot of times you'll have a good idea prior to any kind of formal commitment coming out. We meet with those folks, find out what's available, and start to, we're close to those guys, we're talking to them every day, you start to get an idea of just, you know, what's available.
Now, I'm not positive, but I think one of the times that you apply for the application is like in July. Put the application in July, and in the fall they award who gets the money, then they're ready to go for the spring projects. Isn't that correct, Betty?
I'll tell you about it, and
But they got time frames on when you can apply for the funds.
it's analogous to the funding that probably took place at your wastewater plant. You knew ahead of time, before EPA finally came out and formally proclaimed that, yes, here's the money, you knew you were getting it ahead of time.
But you're not going to get any funds through ODNR or anything else if you don't have a master plan and a concept and everything ready to go when the funding becomes available, so you can turn your project in and get high on priorities. Better you are, the better prepared you are, the higher, the better they're going to look at you. Because I've sent them into ODNR before, but they never got off the shelf. Probably still collecting dust.
What happens if we don't get along after phase one? We want to switch to somebody else for phase two.
I hope we can shake hands and say it's been
I
nice.
mean, we're not tied in.
I don't know.
And we just proceed our own way.
We don't have a fish fight or.
Nope. We're generally pretty agreeable folk. One other thing let me mention, Kelly, and that is the recreational bond issue. ODNR is promoting right now a bond issue that, if it goes the way it's planned right now, will come before voters in May. And it will be a bond issue to fund one of the largest things that will be funding our local park and recs projects. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot more said about it between now and then. So keep your ears open. But right now, again, because we're working with the guys at ODNR, we know that they're pushing it. And so that's one of the items that could also have a major impact on it. A major project like that would get approved by the voters in May. I'm not saying you're going to get money in June, because look at issue 2. There's a classic case where it was tied up administratively for better than a year.
And there was a director on duty for a year. Got a director to put it out.
Keep your ears open for that. It's called a recreational bond issue. It's tied in with the same issue that's going to be used, about a third of it will be used to clean up some toxic and hazardous waste dumps around Ohio. The second third will be used for local park and recs.
Anybody else have anything to do, Jim? I think we may have a meeting, kind of after we met with everybody and things that have been brought up, and maybe ask for some more quotes on some added stuff like topo and things of that nature. Things that we may get back to each one of the people and see what to do with it.
Looks to me like if we were gonna do this, and we have to furnish the the survey, and they do that, he doesn't manage to just go ahead and hire them to do the thing too.
Well, basically,
I don't know.
the survey that we're gonna have in here is, I'm gonna give them a copy of our deed to the property. It's a meets and bounds description of that piece of property, and basically, probably be the survey of the property here. That's what we would give them, that's what the tax map has, the county engineer has passed that to be a good sufficient warranty deed, and it's close enough to satisfy the county engineer, and everything's
I thought
close.
it said something about topo and stuff.
It says both, it says boundary and topo, but if you've had it recently surveyed, you've got a good, like you said, warranty deed. One thing, you notice we've got the natural boundary on this side of Clear Creek, and you're not expanding all the way to the very limits of your property line. Generally, because we may not be touching areas in here, there may not be any need for a full-scale boundary survey at this time, because why? You're not, it's different if you're going to put a major structure close to a property line. You want to be sure. But if we're not going to be doing anything out in here to within, say, 10 to 20 feet of the perimeter of the property,
Well, those boundary lines have all been surveyed.
then there's no reason to do it again.
Cardy's already surveyed those when we sold off to Weedy's Tech, and we've done these different things.
Well, if it's been that recently, then you'll be in real good
It's been
shape.
done in the last 3 years, it's been surveyed. The only thing that hasn't been surveyed is our far east boundary line and the creek. We know we're not gonna go across the creek anyway.
Right.
So an aerial photograph or USDS is gonna be, we're not gonna be down that close to the creek on that south side.
A copy of the topographics survey that I saw appeared on paper to be adequate too, to do the final plans. I think it was 1 foot, maybe
Yeah.
2.
Aerial,
You're going to be all right then.
I think you're all right, and it will just be a matter of picking up some selected objects, like I said, that may not appear on the map, and minor changes and things like that since the time the map was run. So I don't think you're going to be required any.
That topo is not over 4 years old. It's done
Nothing's
way
changed
closer.
there.
No.
Yeah, nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed, there's nothing been going on out there, so you probably won't have to do surveys.
That's what I was hoping we wouldn't spend any other money on.
Well, we know the boundary comes against the Weestack property, does it?
We stand on what the city already owns, but we had survey done on it. Survey was done on the north property line when we purchased the Shanksville. It was surveyed. So all of it's done. So it has an all new boundary line. Everything else is bounded to the creek on the west and the south. East property lines, the only thing that we, would be questioned.
That's good. That's good. I guess that's not an issue then.
I didn't think it was, but talking with Greg, he felt it was sufficient enough. Well,
Yep.
he showed me everything.
I didn't realize it's a 1 foot contour interval. That's, you don't come any better than that.
But we can look at it right after this meeting.
Sure.
If you want to show it to us, and we can analyze it that time.
What John's talking about, let's say we're going to have some local drainage here, we're going to run a pipe or a swale over the creek at this point. What we might do is just send a crew down to get some local elevation,
Yeah.
just to be sure that it drains, because like you mentioned, the vegetation along that creek bank might be so, you couldn't get an accurate reading on it. We want to be specific. So.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. We'll,
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time.
we'll get back to you folks and see what we can come up with. You can keep this book if you want to.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Need more copies? Let us know.
Okay.
Right here, and he's on city council. That's Dick Schaefer at Recreation Park, out the ballpark. He's the manager out there. And can't remember your name.
I'm Larry Branstetter.
Larry Grandison, that's right.
If you forget, my letter's signed in there somewhere. And what I thought I'd do, since there's just a few of us, is we've got some graphics here of various projects in which we've been involved, and we won't necessarily go through all of those. But I think if we've examined your site on a couple different occasions, I've seen the drawings that have been done, this sort of preliminary drawings, showing the configuration of ball fields and so forth. I've got some comments about that. As a matter of fact, sometime this evening, just go get that drawing and bring it in here.
Can we do it now?
If you don't mind, Mayor. We can refer to that under the conversation piece. In the presentation, and you can take a quick look at that if you like. There's a section in there on experience. And just a quick overview. We've been in business since 1979, and we've listed, I think, most of the parks that we've done over the years. We are an architectural and engineering firm with offices in Cincinnati and Lexington. We've got about 20 people on our staff. We have just started and will continue to work with a separate department in the firm that will be simply for park and recreation planning. And the other things that the firm does, we'll refer to that in a little while. The other things that our firm does, most of our clients are cities and counties. About 80% of our clients are cities, counties, and other institutional groups. We do just about anything that a city might need. So I've been to about 2,000 city council and park board meetings in the last 15 years, and a variety of other get-togethers like that. I believe that the public process of construction has a lot of pitfalls, but at the same time it creates a lot of opportunities. You're never at a loss for sidewalk superintendents, and you always have to be accountable to the public. In park design and park planning, we have evolved in the 1950s from the kind of parks in which you more or less scatter the various recreational activities on the site and hope that everything works out. Now we're seeing more and more emphasis on active versus passive recreation, such that the times when you incorporate passive recreation in an active park, you have to cordon off those areas so that you're responsive to both groups. Another thing that's occurred in recreation is an awareness, if you will, of all the populations that might use the park, whether they be small children, young adults, adults, and senior citizens. So we've seen that evolve over the last 15 years. For instance, at Panther Creek Park, which is in Owensboro, Kentucky, we've got the active recreation more or less out in the front of the park, with the passive recreation to the rear, and there's kind of an area right in the middle, which is play areas and pavilions and parking that acts as a buffer between those two. So in concept, those are some of the things that we take a look at. Your park, on the other hand, you're anticipating a lot of ball fields with a community building, a pool, and some parking. What I'm going to do tonight is to show you that we've done every element that you're anticipating in one form or another. I'd like to show you some of these things in photograph form so that you can see how they actually turned out. So if we could turn out those lights, we'll go to the slides. Then we can discuss our scope of services. And anywhere along the line, if you've got any questions, just go ahead and ask, and we can address those. If you see something that you don't understand, or if you don't like it, don't worry, we're pretty thick-skinned. And we can see how what we're doing, what we've done in the past, relates to the type of thing that you anticipate. First, I'm going to show you some community buildings, some community centers, a little bit about pools, and then we'll end up with the more active things, baseball fields and those types of projects. Here's who we are. We're Anstead Carroll. We're architects and engineers and planners, and we've got offices in Lexington and Cincinnati, and got about 10 people in each office. Here's a building that's really not too far away. It's in Williamsburg, Ohio, down in Claremont County. It's the Williamsburg Library. We do a lot of work in Claremont County. The Claremont County Park Commission has been a client of ours for about the last 7 years. They do a small project or so every year. And tonight, Mr. Carroll is down meeting with the Claremont County Park Commission, going over some bids that we received for Shiloh Park. This building is for the library board, and they selected about half a dozen Cincinnati area architectural firms that are doing several projects for the library board throughout Claremont County. The building was dedicated last summer at a cost of approximately $50 a square foot. Here's the interior of the building. Again, just giving you an overview of the community buildings. We do a lot of city halls, a lot of fire stations, educational buildings, all very similar to this type of project that you see here. Here is a community center. This is more recreationally oriented, and part of your program is some kind of a community building. This is a community center for the Hamilton County Commissioners, and it's on Pippin Road in Greater Cincinnati. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time in detail on it. As you can well imagine, this is the gymnasium. It's the higher element. Got some lockers out here that are designed in such a way that they could get a future pool in the foreground. And then immediately behind that are offices and some other community-type rooms. This big glass piece that you see here is over the corridor that joins the low area of the building with the higher area of the building. And that's really the only exterior lighting that we've got in the building for glass. And the energy costs and the operating costs of this project are about half of what a typical building might be. Another project that I started working on in 1975 is the Bellevue Community Center in Bellevue, Ohio. And this community center is on a 45-acre park site that we designed. And in the background of the rendering, you can see some ball fields and some passive areas. And they've got tennis courts and quite a few other active recreational facilities. In this case, the community center, like your proposed or future community building, acts in concert with these facilities to provide locker space, provides storage areas, provides some parking, and provides offices for the recreation department and all of the support facilities that you need for active recreation. To the left of the building here is an amphitheater, and that was a program that the Park Board wanted in the park. And at the time, it would have been about a $400,000 expenditure to build a freestanding amphitheater. So we decided to do there, we recommended that for about $150,000, these are in 1976 dollars, they could attach that amphitheater to the building and get a double lick, if you will, on the facilities in the building. In other words, storage areas and support space, they can use the building itself. Here it is in the flesh, so to speak, and the wall in the foreground is the perimeter wall around the amphitheater, and this canopy not only leads to the front door, but also provides a canopy for the amphitheater, which you'll see in a minute. The gymnasium is below grade, and there's a lower level of the entire building. It's a total of 20,000 square feet. And I know you don't have a community center, but this is in a city of 8,000 people, and this community center generates about $100,000 a year in user fees. And you may not be to that point where you're really thinking about user fees on your park site, but when you get to the point of looking at a community building or a pool, because of the excessive operating costs of a pool and a community building, you really have to be thinking of how do we recover those operating costs through user fees. In recreation, we're seeing that municipalities are taking the attitude that the city will pay for capital improvements out of its normal capital improvement fund, but they try to recover the operating costs through user fees from the people that actually use the facility. And that's pretty much the strategy or the line of attack that cities have been using in the last several years in order to retire the cost of these various projects. This slide is in backwards, but that shows you the entrance onto the site. And this slide was taken before this field way in the back was developed into ball fields. The other thing that we did was we set this up such that this could be a control gate into the ball fields, such that if they had softball tournaments, in this part of Ohio, fast pitch softball is real big. And they can get a softball tournament on a weekend that might have 6-8 teams, and they'll charge an admission to the games. So they can control all that by running everybody right through that canopy and setting up the desk and setting up a control desk here that goes right into the recreation director's office. And that was one of the reasons that it's designed the way it is. Here's the amphitheater. We took concrete tees, put them on grade beams, and then put a concrete cap on each one of the steps and a brick wall around the perimeter. And you can see this canopy serves as kind of a rostrum, so when they have high school graduations and that kind of thing, they can set up to view the various functions that they have. We do a lot of swimming pools. We've done about 20 or 30 of those. This one's in Charlotte, North Carolina. That we did three rec centers for the city of Charlotte. And back in 1987, or 80, I guess it was 87, we drove back to see this one, to see how it looked. And the one on the right's my son. The one on the left's not. And
Can you prove that?
he's a little bigger than I am. But anyway, we do like, the projects are kind of like kids. You'll just drive out of your way to see them. Here's another pool, Lynchburg, Virginia, that we did. This won an award in Virginia, North Carolina Recreation Society. Again, you're looking at a possible swimming pool. We've done a lot of pools. And we've probably done more pools in the state of Ohio than all the other firms combined in terms of public municipal pools. This one happens to be in Virginia, and this was part of the city's bicentennial in 1986. Here's another project, park project in Bedford, Indiana. The top of the water slide is always the best place to get. It's a good vantage point. And if you've seen the water slides at the beach, well, these water slides are freestanding, and the photographer here is about 30 feet in the air. But I did want to point out in the back is a large pavilion that was part of the program. Plus, we renovated the old bathhouse and the other pool and made that park offices. And then this serves as the bathhouse facility with the parking in between the two. So again, if you're looking at pools, I think we can bring a lot to a lot of expertise to the program, simply because we've done so many. We've done many in smaller cities, and we have a pretty good understanding of what you're up against. We did one in Upper Sandusky, Ohio, about 6 years ago. Actually, it's in Harrison Smith Park here, the one green drawing just to the right of the screen. And that pool is in a certain city of 7,000 people, and they have an operating budget, an operating surplus every year of about $10,000. So, contrary to most pools, they have good attendance, good user fees, and they recover in excess of their operating expense. This is in Gallipolis, Ohio. That's President of Council going down that slide, I think. He was one who was opposed to the project, so they sent him down the slide first. Getting more strictly into park design, this is the first park project that we did for the city of Upper Sandusky. And if you're looking at a park facility that's going to encompass the needs of a lot of different groups, not just baseball or softball. Things like these pavilions that you see here, and these tot lots, would be part of your program. Here we've got a restroom building and a picnic pavilion, and then this is really it's a big sandbox. And we've kind of pioneered this idea. People are crazy about it, to say the truth. But we take these what we call big toys, whatever have you, these big timber toys, we mount them in sand so if kids fall off, they don't get hurt as badly. And you can have some climbing and sculptural things, which are kind of fun. And these types of facilities add to the diversity in your park design. Sure, you got ball fields there, and you got soccer fields perhaps, and all of those other things. But when you begin to add these, it becomes a park facility that can be enjoyed by all age groups, such that while you're out playing ball, you know, mom and grandparents, you know, they might be picnicking or whatever have you. And I know when I played softball a lot, the best part was that the kids would come to the games. They wouldn't sit there in the stands and watch. They'd be out playing around in the sand and the mud and all those good things. Now my kids don't even come to my games anymore. So. And I was on a good team last year, too. So this is all really what we consider part of it. Here it is from another angle. Again, those are all store-bought toys, if you will. And then make a big sandbox. You have to do a little drainage and some other things to make sure that you don't get lakes and puddles. But that's really what it's all about. There it is. You can see it one more time. This park was done in 1982. One other thing, here's a fairly low-cost amphitheater in Winchester, Kentucky that was done. I didn't bring the graphic. This project won a national award called the That's My Park Award, primarily because Rockwell International gave them $30,000, and then Rockwell was real happy with it, so they lobbied for them to get this award. Not that it showed necessarily any design genius. We have a softball field and a soccer field way off on the other end of this park site. This has been the site of Kentucky Wesleyan College. And the building just to the left was the gymnasium building of the college. And then Kentucky Wesleyan moved to Owensboro, and they took out most of the buildings. But there was a public outcry about tearing down these vacant buildings. So we said, let's take some of the pieces of those historic buildings, and we used them, if you will, as street furniture. And so we did that throughout the park site, using the columns and the column capitals and some of the other paraphernalia from the building. And what they can do now is they more or less use those columns, as you see there, as a backdrop for that stage. And then the stage is designed to accept one of those large umbrella structures, tent structures, like they have at Kings Island. I think they have them at the beach too. There's large canvas structures that they can put up, and so that's designed to accept that as well. Here's a little closer picture. Now, getting into restrooms and buildings like this. This is a little two-unit restroom building that we have down in Owensville for the Carmine County Park Commission. We also have one of these in Clyde, Ohio. We also have one in Newtown, Ohio. Plus, and there's one in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, and about 4 or 5 other places in Ohio or Kentucky. People seem to like this for a variety of reasons, and I'll tell you why. The biggest reason is that in order to reduce vandalism, which you may or may not, I'm not sure if you have such a problem here in Hillsboro or not.
Minimal.
Well, even if you don't, it's probably not a bad idea to design the buildings so they can be as vandal-proof as possible. What we do here is put an overhead metal door like you find at a loading dock. When the restrooms are open, they raise the door. Men's are on one side, women's on the other. And it gives good control, because most of the time during the winter, when these park buildings are not being used, is when they're prone to most vandalism. So we've used this on the park buildings, on restrooms, on pool bathhouses, and it seems to work out real well. And after we did the first one of these buildings, the cost was reasonably low, the maintenance is reasonably low, the vandalism is virtually non-existent, and they just become very popular. I can't tell you exactly why. Here it is from the back. Again, it's not a piece of architectural history, but it is a very functional building. It's very low cost. Now we're getting into some baseball fields, and these fields here are in the project Roger Dent Park in Fremont, Ohio, which we did in 1981. We've probably done half a dozen projects that have baseball fields, or a lot of baseball fields. I flew over one yesterday. We were coming back from Cleveland, and on the airlines, I looked down in North Ridgeville. I'd done a baseball complex in 1976, and that's up in an area right near Lake Erie. The ground's real flat. You can hardly get any drainage at all. But from the air, the fields looked real good. I tried to talk them into building 5 fields with under drains, and they wanted 9, so we ended up with 9 baseball fields. And they said they'd come back and put in the under drains later, but I'm not sure if that ever happened. Of course, last year in the drought, that wasn't a problem. But this past year, I'm sure they were pretty wet. Here in Fremont, the building that you see in the middle is actually in the middle of the ball fields. And that's a restroom, concession, and storage building. And then we put this tower in here for a future press box. In this part of the state, the facility that you've got here is very nice. And I've not seen any that are publicly owned that are anywhere close to it. But in this part of the state, it was very popular. They have since, I believe, put the press box on it. The federal funds they used for this project would not fund the press box, so we couldn't put that in the program. But they did let us do this much. And in this part of the state of Ohio, up north, they play a lot of fast-pitch softball, so they have a lot of interest, and they have a lot of, so using a press box and all those things is pretty much part of the game plan. A couple other things that you can see are the types of backstops that were used. The dugouts In this case, Fremont simply wanted to have a dugout that was a fenced-in dugout, and didn't have a cover on it. Never had it. I think you've got coverings over your dugouts. Ones where my son plays Little League, they're all covered. They're just out of concrete block, so they're not. There's nothing special with those. But in this case, this is what they wanted. This is what we provided for them. One of the things that we looked into very carefully when we designed these ball fields was that we wanted a minimum of 100 feet between the edges of the fields. Some people said we could get down to 60, but we said we investigated this and found it necessary to put in 100 feet, and we're glad that we did. A few other points. In the lights, all these fields are lighted. These are the Musco prefabricated light fixtures that come out on the site. And they've got, if you can just kind of look carefully here, you can see the light fixture. They've got the cage that's a platform for repair. And then it's got a conduit that runs down the pole, and the junction box is down here. And so what happens is these are much less expensive. They just put the poles in the ground, and then they bring this whole cage and light assembly and bolt it onto the pole. It used to be you had to have metal angles and do each light one at a time and all those kinds of things. And it was much more expensive because you had all that piecework. But this product's been on the market now for about 12 years, and we found it to be very satisfactory. And in the other ball diamonds we used it. This is what we used it for the first time. But we done a baseball complex in Mount Vernon, Ohio that had the old light fixtures with steel angles that we had to fabricate on site and put each light fixture in it and everything. And that was just kind of a bear to get that to work right, because you had to make sure every one of them were constructed properly. In this case, it's like buying an off-the-shelf item and sticking it on a pole. Here's a view from the left field bleachers. Here we use the metal overhead doors again in the building, painted them red, and then put a hydrozo finish on the buildings themselves on that split-face concrete block. And I believe we're supposed to have a fourth field in here, but the city needed this area for their sludge pond for their sanitary sewer plant, so we lost that there. And but 2 of the 3 fields are for regulation baseball, and I believe the 3rd is for softball. This site's real flat. Your site, like the rest of this part of the state, is somewhat rolling, so drainage is not going to be as much of a problem here, even though you're in part of a floodplain. You still have some topography. In this case, up in Fremont, that ground's just as flat as can be, and there again. And I think in your case it should be the same. We had a series of catch basins all through here and then ran the water off the softball fields into a swale and then caught it in the catch basins. So we tried to get sheet flow all the way across the field, beyond the fence, before it went into the catch basins. And of course, we got under drains as well. One of the things you want to avoid is a situation where the water might puddle up, say right on the edges in here. That means you got to wait a little longer before you get on and play. And you like to have a field mix that's got a lot of sand to it, obviously, and then most of your softball and Little League enthusiasts are going to want to be putting more and more sand in it as time goes on. Trying to think of what's the stuff in bags. I don't know if you use that to dry the fields.
Yeah, we use 3 or 4 different kinds. What we're using now is center corn cobs. I forget what they call it now. But there's quite a few different ones out on the market.
You ever burn the field off to dry it out?
We attempted to do that. What we use now is the best thing we use.
And it comes in bags and you shovel it out. We've done that before. With my son's Little League group, it's a parent-run league. Use a city park, but it's parent-run, and so the parents are the ones out there drying up the field. Is your baseball and softball city-run, or?
Recreation committee or commission, they call it, and it's all volunteer, but it's run by a recreation commission at the ballpark.
You get your own board and everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's the way ours goes too. That seems to work out real well. And then in our case, what we like is the fact that it's a parent or board-run league, and the board selects the managers like the Little League. And board has to pass on managers and coaches. And do you use regular Little League rules here on for your youth baseball?
Until we get to the balk rule, we don't use the balk rule. In Little League balk rules, there's about 3 pages on what you can do as far as the balk. So
Yeah.
we do not have any balk at all.
I see.
Other than that, we go strictly Little League.
But you put nines through 12s together in the same
No.
team?
We divide up, we have what we call a C and A league. We play 9 and 10-year-olds in the C league, 11 and 12 in the A.
I see. Cincinnati does that too. It's called knothole.
Yeah, they do something similar, not only their age group is different, but we use regulation, Little League size diamond, which is 46 pitches and 60 bases, where not whole. As you move from C to B or A, the diamond gets bigger.
Yeah, C is 60, B is 80, and A is 90. I used to umpire knothole when I was in high school and college. down in
We have
Cincinnati.
a great tournament here at the end of the year. We have a Little League tournament and a Pony League tournament, which is 13, 14, 15-year-olds, and then 9 through 12 in Little League. And I think this year we had 44 teams in it. We had quite a few teams out of Cincinnati area and Kentucky area, and north of Cincinnati, Hamilton, and the towns up there. One of them, they have a real good. Anyway, they come up here and they're used to playing knothole, where they lead off. See, Little League, you
Yeah, right.
can't lead off. They lead off. Their pitching distance, they've been pitching from, we pitched 46, some of them have been pitching from 52, maybe 48, and they adjust to it just like that. There's no problem. They don't get called out for leading off, but they go from knothole to our Little League rules, and they adjust real quick to it.
Well, knothole C League is fairly close to Little League. Little League, you can be a 12-year-old and play. In knothole C, you can't be 12. You've got to be 11 or 10.
Yeah, but see, then when they move up to B League, then they're still our age.
Right. First year B League would be 12-year-olds, so that'd be knothole age.
Yeah. But
I'm sorry, Little League age.
And they're pitching from I think maybe the bases are farther.
80-foot bases in B.
Yeah, see, we're 60.
Right.
So they're used to playing on a bigger diamond. Yet they adjust to our Little League rules.
I'm sure it did. Well, when I played B League knothole in Cincinnati when I was a kid, we played in a regular knothole league down on Eastern Ave and down East End, and then we played in another league, in what's called the Crosley League, which was another league that they had. It was outside of the city and outside of the Recreation Commission, and that was for a little more advanced players, and that worked out real well. I think we played 2 nights a week in that, and then 3 times a week in Little League, in knothole. So, my parents just about had their fill of baseball. Then when my brother came along, he hardly played at all. So, but these fields, the fields in the smaller cities are usually in much, much better condition than the ones in the big cities. In Cincinnati, all they would do would be to give you you'd get a backstop. You get a backstop with really no other fences. And, do you play any fast pitch softball up there?
Very little. They had a fast pitch tournament here that the slow pitch guys started last year and this year. Fast pitch used to be the thing.
Yeah.
Then went to slow pitch. They had no league, and the only time they played is in August. They had a tournament. The guys that have played fast pitch in the past, and some of them never played this play, but fast pitch here is, well, actually, of course, Southern Part of the highest in the country.
Well, I played fast pitch. All of the pitchers were late 30s, early 40s, maybe even older. And the rest of the guys on the team were like 25, 26, and 27. And we all took it pretty seriously. And that's the only time I ever broke any bones in sports, fast pitch softball. And because I guess everybody played it so much more intently than anything else. Well, anyway, this is kind of typical of baseball complexes that we've worked on. A lot of parks will have 1 or 2 ball diamonds. Some parks will have a family ball diamond, which is really for Sunday afternoon, family reunion type games. It's not too hard to convert one of these. If you don't, some of the cities like to be able to use it also for soccer, in which case you wouldn't have as much of a high of a pitcher's mound and all that. I really can't visualize you doing that here. But if soccer does become popular, it might behoove you to think about a little more soccer like they did here in Mason with all the soccer fields here and the baseball fields here. This works out to be a little bit better. What's happening is that the soccer people are starting to play in the spring and the fall, cutting into Little League. And we're seeing that in a lot of different cities. So you're setting up an automatic conflict between the two. Do you folks have much strong soccer group here?
It's getting stronger.
I'd be inclined, with all the land you've got out here, if nothing else, if you don't develop these ball diamonds initially, at least have soccer practice fields available. Really all it takes is a graded off, seeded, put in the goals.
And there's soccer fields on there? Iron green?
That's right, there are some, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's, fairly simple thing to do. And kids will play soccer on fields that do this, so it's not quite, you don't quite need as much facility as you need for baseball. These photos were taken right after the fields were finished, and I always tell people with baseball fields, Mother Nature is going to grow grass for you in about 30 days under ideal conditions. But it takes a good year, in my opinion, for seeded baseball fields to become playable. Cities always want to get on and start to play as soon as it gets green. And you get this young grass that's coming up, and if that doesn't take root, that'll get destroyed and all kinds of weeds will come up and you'll have a devil of a time trying to get rid of those things in the long term. So my advice to you there is be patient during the construction of these baseball fields, such that your construction season allows you to have at least one growing season in which the grass grows and you can cut it and you seed the bare spots and get a good turf inside that fence for the long-term health of the facility. I know that sounds like the least of your problems now, but it's something that you just need to prepare yourselves for and the public as a whole, so that you can get a good stand of grass. A couple other things. These are just concrete block buildings, fairly vandal-proof. Outdoor light fixtures. Like to pave around the buildings just because you have people standing around. It just makes for a little nicer facility.
What did you design there, and when did you take it? The red, you got that so that
Those are just overhead metal doors, like shutters, and they just roll up. Yeah. You go inside, and they lock on the inside. You take the padlock out and roll it up. There's a shroud that it sits in. You can hit those things with a baseball bat. They won't do anything to it. Your local board of health will determine whether you should put a screen or a mesh in there. Some boards of health require the mesh, others don't. In Cincinnati, in Hamilton County, you can build a concession stand. Like if one of the outlying suburban communities builds a concession stand for a park or at a pool, the health department will come out and make you put in screens for bugs. If you go to Riverfront Stadium, if you ever go to the Bengals game or Reds game, have you ever seen any screens in those concession stands around the stadium? And that's a county-owned facility. So, in Fremont's case, they didn't require that we put the screens in. And screens are more of a vandalism maintenance problem. I think I don't really think they keep the bugs out. That's been our experience. But anyway, did I answer your question? Here's another shot of it. And here's right field on one ball field. This is a project under construction in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, which is just south of Cincinnati, just across the river. And this park sits in the in the landing pattern for runway 27 left. If you ever land down there on your way to and from Florida. This site was real hilly. I mean, this is real hilly. We moved 35,000 yards of dirt around different parts of the site. While we're under construction, we took these photographs, and I don't think I've got any finished photographs. This ball field was not lighted. Again, it's, you know, that was their program. I think they have, we had a fence put around it, but we did not light the field. Immediately behind that is a soccer field. And the soccer field really gets more play than does the baseball field. Don't ask me why. But you can see from that retaining wall, we terraced this park onto the site. And in more urban areas, where you've got a city that's like in greater Cincinnati or greater Columbus, whatever, large tracts of open land for recreational use are much harder to come by. So they tend to do their parks on smaller tracts of land. In your case, you're very fortunate because you've got that large tract of land that's now available to you. And that's a resource that many of the people in this city may not really appreciate until you go to other cities and see that, you know, so many times they'll try to put 4 or 5 ball fields on just 5 or 8 acres, and it just intensifies the use. Again, here's another those tot lots, and then immediately behind you then is the soccer field. Here it is again. We might have these slides flipped around. This is for the grass grew. We're under construction. But you can see how we terraced in the soccer field, and the baseball field is, see that? That little silver thing is the backstop for the baseball field. So we terraced all those different fields in the playing surfaces into the site in order to get the use that they wanted. Here it is again. We've got what's called a park course. Now, Kelly had talked about putting a park course around this site, one of those exercise courses.
Yeah.
And we've probably put in a dozen of those in various parks. Down in Bourbon County Park in Paris, Kentucky, they'll have 700 people out using that thing on Saturday. That's how popular those things are. People, this is the truth. People will drive to use an exercise course, and they'll complain that the parking lot is too far from where they start the exercise course. And I've heard them complain about having to walk too far to play tennis. I've heard people complain about having to walk too far to play softball. And, you know, it just, you wonder if it's not counterproductive. And here are the pavilions. Here's some of the pavilions at the Fort Mitchell project, and in the foreground is the soccer goal. This project also won an award, and they called this, people in Fort Mitchell refer to those pavilions as Stonehenge. And we painted them all white. And that's the end of our slides. I'm just going to very briefly highlight a few of these projects that we brought. Here's a new complex in Bowling Green, Kentucky, called the Russellville Road Park. This is kind of a working copy, so what we did was we reduced this to 8.5 by 11 and put in the final report. This thing's been through a Xerox color copier, so that's why it's a little bit rough. 4 baseball fields. This is on top of the hill. Then it goes down the hill, and we've got the tennis courts and the game courts. And there's a pool here and a community center and some parking. And this is on the boulevard. Got a pond up here to catch the groundwater that comes down, picnic areas and passive areas. And we're hoping to get started on that project next year. Got 4 300-foot fields for softball. I don't know what you folks might be anticipating for softball, but you know, it used to be the standard used to be 260 feet, and then moved to 280, and now they're 300. I played softball in the 300. It was 325 in the power alleys, and that was just a lot of ground to cover. Just seemed to hit a home run rather than have to chase it.
Yeah, the new one we have out here is 300 feet,
Is it?
and all the rest of them would be 300 feet too.
Yeah. Now in fast pitch, we only use 260.
Some pitchers you didn't need in there. Nobody ever hit.
That's true. A few altogether. This is the locations of the major parks, and so we will be studying and doing a master plan update, if you will, to identify what the long-term goals of the recreation program for the city of Cincinnati will be. And that graphic will show that. And I believe the rest of these projects are fairly typical of what we've done. And if you have any questions about these, I'm happy to.
Do you have any involvement with that bicentennial Commons, Cincinnati?
No. The one in Sawyer Park, no. That's being done by about half a dozen firms involved with Sawyer Park. What thoughts have you folks had on what your time schedule might be, or how you might want this project to proceed?
Basically, what Kelly and I had in mind was just throwing some ideas out to the Recreation Committee at Council. We feel like that the entire 234 acres we need a master plan for it, and then the council and the different recreation committees around the community is going to have to make a decision on which way we want to move. If we want to move doing one diamond at a time, or look into pursuing funding, or how we want to do it. But we feel like we need a master plan to go with. And our idea was to have you to come and show us your ideas, and then council make up their mind if they do want to pursue a plan, and if they do, what firm they want to hire to.
Okay. Well, we won't provide any. I was my understanding you're going to go through and just take proposals and look at people's experience, and then make a selection, and then start the planning process. What we'll do for you, if you want to turn to the cover letter, you probably had a chance to review it. I'll just go through these point by point. The first is really to meet with the owner and determine your program of requirements, and that's just fancy jargon for asking the question, what do you want to do and what do you want to accomplish? I've seen your existing ball fields, ballpark, and that's as fine a facility as I've seen in any city for multi-diamonds, for what you've got there. So your program of requirements, my understanding would be to, in many respects, to duplicate or at least stay at that level of quality. Is that?
It would be far better than anything you showed us on those slides.
Yeah.
Not being rude or anything, but it would have to be, well, like you say, as good or better than what we have now. And what we have now is pretty good.
Yeah, you do. And I've not seen anything to that level. And I'm not sure there is anything around the state. So I'm reasonably sure that our competitors aren't going to show you anything at that level either. It's just isn't there. People just don't want to spend the money for it. And but at the same time, if you've got your existing facility as the standard, then recapturing that somewhere else,
Yeah.
I think that would be a good project. And I don't think that would be that difficult. I mean, it's obviously, technically we can do it. It's just a matter of paying for it. So, but anyway, part of that would be looking at your existing site, looking at what you're trying to accomplish, and then figuring out what your goals are. The second item would be to examine your existing site, the site information. Here we're asking that you provide a boundary survey and the topographic survey, which I believe you've got anyway, so that's not any problem. 3 would be to prepare 3 alternative site plans for review and analysis by the owner. I'll tell you why we do this. Whoever your working committee would be, and I assume it might be the 3 of you, we know there's more than one way to skin a cat. And the best way to get you folks thinking and talking and telling us how you react to these design schemes is, we found, is to show it 3 different ways, or 4 or 2, whatever it might turn out. And then we look at the things by comparison. We'll go over scheme A, scheme B, and scheme C, and then from your discussion about what you like and dislike about each one. Then we can come back and go again, giving you another design scheme, maybe a fourth or a fifth or however long it takes. Usually what happens is that we'll do 3 alternatives. Any one of them would work. The preference that the owner has, that the owner's representatives have, through the discussion, by the time we go through the 4th or 5th round, if you will, that pretty well ties it down. And from that point on, you're just tying down details. For instance, you've got walkways and roadways through there, and I'm not sure which are which. And I realize some developers do this for you. Our first inclination is to avoid, as much as you can, the conflict between cars and people, so that you don't have to worry about kids getting hit by cars and all those good things. Those are some of the basic park design items that you bring in. One question we had about this site would be a secondary access point in and out of it. Because ultimately there would be a lot of intensive use. You might even need to put another roadway to it so that you won't have traffic jams. And I've seen traffic pile up after softball games. If you have 3 or 4 games going on at one time, and then they all change times, you could have a real mess. So those are some of the things that you have to think about. We would take a look at that again in alternative form, allow you to discuss it, or in a meeting we discuss it. And then we would come back. Last night we had a park we're working on in Crescent Springs, Kentucky, which is just right near Fort Mitchell. And we presented the 3 schemes, and out of that, we ended up kind of scratching one out together that we're going to use that as the basis for our next meeting. We'll refine that design. And much of the design sketches that you see are very similar to the ones that I've shown you tonight. So that's the part. And then based upon, at the same time we show you the 3 alternative plans here in 3, we do a cost estimate for each one, so that you see what the comparative costs are. Then based upon the selected alternative and revisions, prepare a final master plan drawing of sufficient scope to be used for cost estimates, promotional uses, grant applications, and other such permits. So your final product would be something similar to this. Now this drawing has there's a second sheet to this that has some little details like the bridges, what the pavilions might look like, and that type of thing. I didn't bring that along. But that's essentially the thing that you're buying from us, is a drawing like this to scale. It says when you want to come in and begin to develop it, and you know what, we try to give what we call a line item cost estimate. You know, cost for each ball field. Trying to break it down like when you buy a car, you have each line item. In that way, City Council over time can kind of determine how much they want to spend at any one time. We'll recommend what phases to do based on, say, storm sewers and grading and all that. So you try to lock those in together, and so that you can coordinate your other underground services like sewers and water and some of the other utilities that you might need. So that's essentially what a master plan drawing is. And then item 5 is preparation of a comprehensive cost estimate. And item 6 is the submission to the owner of a rendered site plan and a written cost estimate, which is what you see here. And then we're asking a fee of $4,500. We think it would take 5 to 8 weeks to complete such a study.
How can you help us as far as getting money?
Well, in the late 70s and in the early 19, I'm sorry, in the mid to late 70s, in the 1980s, early 1980s, before President Reagan came along, there was a 50% matching grant program, which was administered by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. In the late 70s, at the height of the program, $9 million was available statewide to be used as matching grant monies. A lot of the projects that I showed you tonight were built with those matching grant monies. Remember I told you about Fremont, where they wouldn't let us put the press box in. They, back in those days, once you submitted a grant application, within 12 months you get funded. They go through a cycle every year. Now, they still do that. Instead of $9 million being available statewide, if I can add, they had $9 million available, and they get about 16 million in applications every year. Of those 16 million, a high percentage of them were either multiple applications from the bigger cities, or they just weren't done very well, or they had something that was incorrect or whatever. So it's pretty easy to get funded. Now, this year, there's $700,000 available statewide, less than 10%. And they've got about 6 million in applications. So you've almost got 10 to 1 in applications for where the money's available. 700,000 will do 4 or 5 nice-sized projects. These the Roger Young Park, there's 3 diamond, each ball diamond now is running about $100,000 for fencing, lighting, and the whole thing. So if you have an application for a $300,000 project, which means you'd have $150,000 federal share, you'd be asking for about 20% of the statewide total. So that's kind of the way that thing's worked out. We can't promise you that we'll get you funding, but we've done as many of these as anybody else. And in Claremont County, we've had one project that's had a grant pending for the last 5 years, and one reason or another, they can never seem to get it funded. We did a project in Crooksville, Ohio, about 2 years ago that got funded. The Pine Hill Park in Mason, Ohio, was funded for land acquisition in 1985. They had part of its land acquisition. In that year, I believe they got about 25% of the total state allotment to buy that land. And so, the availability of federal funding is certainly not as strong as it used to be. Your state issue 2, this is from a state issue 2 eligible item. So it's going to be difficult to get outside funding sources for a park. I don't know, you may have heard differently from anybody else, and if you have, I'd be interested to know.
The only thing is sort of based on this, what happens to election when they vote for what they have a recreation thing attached to a couple other things, and I don't know how much money it's generating.
Here locally, I mean?
No, statewide. You didn't know about that. The reason we know, somebody told us, and I do too.
Yeah. What is it now, man?
It's a recreation levy.
Yeah.
Be voted on or tax.
I understood it, Rice County Department of Natural Resources had it on the ballot. Wasn't that the way you understood it?
Yeah.
Along with a couple other things. But that was included in, I think, waste, the chemical waste or something was part of it.
Well, were they using that to supplement what the feds used to provide?
Could be.
That could very well be, because other states have done that. It's just a matter of whether it passes or not. Usually the amount of money that they make available is still fairly small compared to what the need is. State issue 2 is a pretty good sized bond issue, and that's generating about $1 billion over 10 years. So
we got 100,000 this year.
yeah, that's good. It's my understanding that they were going to try and develop this park and then hopefully sell that other property that the existing ball fields are on.
It'd probably be the other way around.
Sell them first and then build it.
Have the master plan and then I would imagine they would sell them. Do anything unless they would be able to come up with some funding sources and stuff like that.
Why would you take that, and rather than run the risk of not having any facility at all for a year or two? Why not just take it out as a short-term note?
We ain't going to run the risk of not having a facility at all. I can tell you that. They'll build the ball diamonds before they turn this off. We'll do that.
They build the other one.
Right, that's what I
They
said.
can occupy where we're at.
Right, that's what I said. We build the other ones and then build the new ones and then sell
we'll sell the old ones with the provision that the new ones gotta be built before they take over the
Okay.
present.
Either way, that's just a matter of transfer.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't transfer title until you got the new ones built.
Right.
And at that point, they just have an option, so you're still building the new ones and then buying the old ones.
Right.
Yep.
We've got an immediate need for a few extra ball diamonds we could use right now. We're kind of looking at it like a phased development of additional diamonds into this land we've just acquired.
Having our master plan and then meeting our immediate needs and then still having the land to where if somebody does come in after the other, we can just phase it all right in together.
Yeah. Is there a possibility that you'd have difficulty selling that land?
I don't know that we're trying to sell it. We have been approached a couple times and have been had an offer.
And the city owns the land? So it's titled to the city of Hillsboro?
We're not trying to sell it. We're not out to sell that land at all. But that land around there is getting so valuable
Yeah.
that we figure one of these days it's going to be so valuable we can't afford to have all that.
Sure. Well, the other side of that coin is that if that land can be developed to its highest and best use, which will generate income, tax income for the school board and the city, it's really in the public interest to do that if you can provide the same recreational resource on land that, Kelly told me what you paid for the property on it. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it was a couple thousand an acre, I think.
Oh, the new property?
Yeah. You know, so you're much better off to make to put the ball fields on that much less expensive land, because you don't need frontage and curb access and all those other things like you would for development.
But we want to come up with a good master plan. And then if we build 2 diamonds right now, we want to make sure that they're in the right spot.
Yeah.
And to the right grade and everything.
Sure. Well, that's exactly right. And we do that with all of them. I mean, that's what I said before about the phasing. You want to phase it so that they all work together in sync. You know, you don't want to have to regrade an existing field to build another one, but that's ludicrous. You don't want to have to relocate storm sewer lines, and you don't want to have to relocate catch basins and water lines and pavement and all that. So that's why, for instance, you take a project here, they're going to build all this themselves. For instance, they might just come in with this one road, a parking lot. In this parking lot, they've got the 4 ball diamonds here. This thing tends to drain this way down, so we're going to set this up to make sure that there's a creek here, but that storm line that we run down through here is just a matter of connecting it up. Initially, they may not even have a storm line in here. They might just use that for sheet flow, but then as this thing becomes more and more developed, we might come in here with we've got them situated in such a way that we can come in and we can install those. But that's a technical issue that we do storm system studies for entire cities, villages. And so with our engineering staff, we've got all that stuff on a computer. And to be honest with you, to do just the storm sewer piece and the drainage on a site like a 200-acre site is just, it's not something we're familiar with. So.
You have your own civil engineers? Or
Yes.
you hire?
No, we've got civil engineers on site.
Your own architect?
We've got architects, landscape architects, and civil engineers. What I guess if we can make any claim to fame is the fact that when it comes to recreation and athletic facilities in the state of Ohio, we're in the mainstream of it. We're doing them all the time. We're set up to be dealing and providing service for municipalities. Our civil engineering group, like we're city engineers for half a dozen cities in the greater Cincinnati area. That's one of the reasons I sat on Newport Planning Commissions. We're city engineers for Newport. So we're always doing pavement, storm sewer, sanitary sewer. We've probably got 20 projects like that underway right now. Some past there now. So we're not fish out of water.
Well, I'm familiar with your type of your business. I didn't know whether you hired an engineering firm to do the engineering firm, or they were part of your.
Part of our firm. One of the reasons we do a lot of this kind of thing is because it is somewhat of a multidisciplinary type project. You know, parks, pools, and athletic facilities are somewhat of an odd duck. You know, you need to have some civil engineering talent, but you need to have some landscape architectural talent, and you need to have some architectural talent on board. And a lot of engineers, a lot of firms that are strictly engineers try to do park work. And it looks like, you know, they'll spend local do cast iron pipes. They're like a sewage treatment plant. And sometimes if you have pure landscape architects do it, pipes aren't big enough. So again, it's a multidisciplinary exercise, and we've kind of evolved into the thing to where we think we've got a pretty good handle on the industry. We have trends in recreation that you have to be aware of. The landscape architect we have he's got 13 years experience, and all of his experience has been in parks and recreation. That's all he does.
See a figure out there a while ago that kind of stunned me. You were talking about the cost of one of the projects per field was $100,000.
That's about right, yeah.
What are you talking about in that $100,000 for that one field?
Well, because the total project cost of Roger Young Park in 1982 was ball fields. But they're lighted, they're totally fenced. They've got paved parking for about 60 cars. We've got a pavilion restroom. We had to run storm lines to it, sanitary lines, and you got toilet facilities and all that. So by the time you get all those support facilities in there, plus roadways, you're going to